Well, Joe Biden is in very, very serious electoral trouble. A brand new set of polls from Emerson Polling finds that Donald Trump is currently up 5 points in Pennsylvania, 5 points in Georgia, 1 point in Michigan, 4 points in Arizona, 3 points in Wisconsin, and 6 points in Nevada. In other words, a Donald Trump blowout. Joe Biden's team is trying to pretend that all is well, all is fine. Harry Enton from CNN, he says, well, no, actually, the polls are worse than they have been for any Democrat since the year 2000. That's how bad these polling numbers are.
Right now, Donald Trump leads in an aggregate of national polls by about 3 percentage points. If you go back 4 years ago at this point, Joe Biden was ahead by 9 points. This right now don't look anything like what we saw 4 years ago at this point. The idea that the polls underestimated Joe Biden last time around, simply put, does not hold any water. So the idea in the Trump era that the polls have underestimated Democrats, whether it be in a Joe Biden matchup, whether it be a matchup against Hillary Clinton, whether it be in the midterms, at least in the national polling that right now shows Donald Trump in his strongest position, simply put, is not true. If anything, the polls have underestimated Republicans during the Trump era, especially in the presidential races in 2016 and in 2020.
The stonewalling, the excuse-making from the White House, none of it is working. None of it is working. But Joe Biden is not going anywhere. So yesterday, Joe Biden put out a letter to his fellow Democrats suggesting, quote, I am firmly committed to staying in this race, to running this race to the end, and to beating Donald Trump. I have had extensive conversations with the leadership of the party, elected officials, rank and file members, and most importantly, Democratic voters over these past 10 days or so. I've heard the concerns that people have, their good faith fears and worries about what is at stake in this election. I'm not blind to them. Believe me, I know better than anyone the responsibility and the burden the nominee of our party carries. I carried it in 2020 when the fate of our nation was at stake. I also know, says Joe Biden, these concerns come from a place of real respect for my lifetime of public service and my record as president, and I've been moved by the expressions of affection for me from so many who have known me well and supported me over the course of my public life. I've been grateful for the rock-solid, steadfast support from so many elected Democrats in Congress. There are not that many of them, and all across the country. And taking great strength from the resolve and determination I've seen from so many voters and grassroots supporters, even in the hardest of weeks. I can respond to all of this by saying clearly and unequivocally, I wouldn't be running again if I did not absolutely believe I was the best person to beat Donald Trump in 2024. That's because he is delusional and his brain no longer functions. And he is blocking out all outside interference, all outside voices at this point. According to this letter, quote, we had a democratic nomination process and the voters have spoken clearly and decisively. I've received over 14 million votes, 87% of the votes cast across the entire nominating process. I mean, he didn't have an opponent, so there was that. This is a process open to anyone who wanted to run. Only 3 people chose to challenge me. One fared so badly he left the primaries to run as an independent. Another attacked me for being too old and was soundly defeated. The voters of the Democratic Party have voted. They have chosen me to be the nominee of the party. Do we just now say this process didn't matter? That the voters don't have a say? I decline to do that, says Joe Biden. I feel a deep obligation to the faith and trust the voters of the Democratic Party have placed in me to run this year. It was their decision to make, not the press, not the pundits, not the big donors, not any selected group of individuals, no matter how well-intentioned. The voters and voters alone decide the nominee of the Democratic Party. Now, all those voters voted before Joe Biden basically had a mental collapse on stage with Donald Trump, of course, but he's not leaving. He is telling you, as you said yesterday, that he is not going. Well, how exactly is Joe Biden going to recapture the magic with the base? Well, there's one outlet he knows he can trust, one place where everybody knows his name. And that, of course, is on Morning Joe over at MSNBC, his favorite show. So Joe Scarborough, who just a few days ago, after the debate, was saying that maybe it's time for Joe Biden to reconsider his race. Well, he's back on the bandwagon, baby. And he says that Dems should stop calling for Joe Biden's ouster. Here was Joe blasting the media elite. He tweeted out, Joe Biden can now say he's having to fight media elites, billionaire donors, Washington politicians, Hollywood moguls, and MAGA extremists. Biden allies will likely mock these elites for wanting to substitute their judgment for that of millions of Democratic primary voters. There's a big problem with that particular argument, which is that the Democratic base is significantly less comfortable with Joe Biden, according to the polls, than the Democrat elite. Here was Joe Scarborough trying to defend Joe Biden.
Joe Biden now can say he's having to fight media elites, New York Times editorial page, billionaire donors. They've been on the phone for a week and a half. Washington politicians, even though Mark Warner has now canceled his meeting. Hollywood moguls. Hey there, Ari. And Ms. Disney. And, of course, MAGA extremists. So Biden allies now, this is what they're going to say. Oh, wait a second. So you're telling me that media elites and billionaire donors and Washington politicians and Washington moguls They all think that they can substitute their judgment for the judgment of millions of Democratic primary voters.
This is so wildly out of touch. Well, Joe Scarborough is very angry at Democrats for calling for Joe Biden's ouster. What he really should be angry at Democrats for is, the giant inflationary cycle that they've unleashed upon the country. One of the consequences of that inflation, everything is too expensive. Well, one way to save money is with changing your cell phone service to Pure Talk. It's half the cost of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. Now you might be thinking, what's the catch? There's no way Pure Talk can offer unlimited talk, text, plenty of data for just $20 a month. I say, just ask the thousands of my other listeners who've already switched. They know the truth. They're loving America's most dependable 5G network. They love Pure Talk's U.S. customer service, their selection of premium phones, the money they are saving month to month. So what exactly are you waiting for? It's time to start supporting companies who actually like your values, like creating American jobs and supporting our veterans. It's time to switch your cell phone service to Pure Talk. Plus, with no contract and a 30-day money-back guarantee, you have nothing to lose. Visit puretalk.com/Shapiro to upgrade your cell phone service to America's most dependable 5G network. Save an extra 50% off your very first month of coverage. That's puretalk.com/Shapiro today. Again, puretalk.com/Shapiro today. All you have to do, head on over to puretalk.com/Shapiro, upgrade your cell phone service, get America's most dependable 5G network, and save an extra 50% off month numero uno. That's puretalk.com/Shapiro today. Scarborough then suggested that he's been having deep, long conversations about foreign policy with Joe Biden. I am sure that Joe Biden is just demonstrating his absolute expertise in the area of foreign policy with Joe Scarborough on the phone.
I've probably spent more time with Joe Biden than most reporters. Talked to him about in-depth foreign policy. Talked to him about the guy was completely there. If he weren't, I would have been the first to come on the show the next day and say,
"Would you though?
The president's not there. He can't complete his duty." I saw him up close. Was he slower? Yes. Was he stiff? Yeah, he was stiff. Was he still able to talk about his plan for Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel and bringing Hamas, that war to an end? Yeah. Was he still able to talk about what he hoped Bill Burns was going to be doing in Russia and Ukraine? Yeah, he was able to do all of that stuff.
Sure. Mika Brzezinski sounded an echoing note here because, again, that echo chamber is real small over there. And she defended Joe Biden's interview with George Stephanopoulos, the one we played yesterday, where Joe Biden sounded like he was in a wind tunnel because he was speaking so softly, and they had to ratchet up the audio level so you could even hear him.
Everyone was watching the Stephanopoulos interview and obviously the debate performance. Joe Biden, it's not like this is the first time he flubs his words. This is
He's
a man.
Been doing it for about 54 years.
Yeah, no. How old is he? He has a stutter. On top of that,
It's the stutter,
he flubs
probably.
his words. He mangles his words. He's not an expert in elocution and Ivy League phraseology and never will be.
Yeah.
But now everyone's looking at it like it's new. That's another thing.
He
has age-related issues.
He had a horrible day.
Sure, guys. Well, what was all that designed to do? What that was designed to do for Joe and Mika was to provide the grounding for Joe Biden's big moment, because here comes Joe calling into Morning Joe. And this is like a big moment for MSNBC because Joe Biden is now calling. You got the president on the line, and the president, who is widely suspected to be senile, this is going to be the magic moment where he has the friendliest reporters on planet Earth to him, speaking with him. So how does Joe do? Well, the first thing he does, he makes a bad joke about Donald Trump golfing.
I'm curious, is that an allusion also to Donald Trump and the fact that Democrats, you believe, may now be doing the same thing that Donald Trump tried to do in 2020, and that is overthrow the popular will of Democratic voters?
Well, look, Joe, let me say it this way. The reason I've been out on the road so much all over the country, and while Trump is riding around in his golf cart, filling out his golf cart before he even hits the ball. But anyway, he hadn't been anywhere in 10 days. I've been all over the country.
I love the forced laughter there for me because she doesn't even know what he's joking about. He can't even finish the joke. Mika's like, Joe Biden says he's not letting up even a little bit.
I'm not letting up, Joe. I am not letting up a little bit. And by the way, France registered, look, you talk about Europe.
Okay, well, that was assuaging of concerns. And then it started to get a little worse because, again, Joe Biden can't keep with it. So he obviously had notes right in front of him, and he was actually reading from the notes. In fact, there was one point during this interview where he's reading from the script, and you actually hear him fumble with the papers. Here is that.
and the folks out there in the local, race. I stopped by campaign field offices with John Fetterman and Madeline Dean, both strongly supporting me. The president and the first lady, we spoke at a campaign ice cream social for APSME, Council 13 in Harrisburg. 40 minutes after we spoke with supporters. Stopped by Denim Coffee. I was with the governor of Pennsylvania.
Like reading from a pre-written list of things that he has done. But even with Joe and Mika, he couldn't keep it under control. So he was asked why he wouldn't take a cognitive test. Joe Biden doesn't want to take a cognitive test because he's going to fail. That's the problem. So he starts yelling about how he doesn't need tests. He has been testing himself.
Have you been tested for any age-related illnesses, pre-Parkinson's, or anything like that that might explain sort of having a night like that where you couldn't finish sentences?
Look, I had a bad night, but the fact of the matter is, look at what I'm doing. Let me put it this way. If there was something that was wrong that night, it's not like it comes and that's one night and it goes away. That's why I've been out. I've been testing myself. Been testing everywhere I go.
Okay.
Going out and making the case. The night of that debate, I went out. I was out till 2 o'clock in the morning. That very night. It drives me nuts, people talking about this.
Okay, it drives him nuts that people are asking him to take a cognitive test. Don't you understand? He's been testing himself. By the same token, I've also been testing myself. I am now officially a nuclear physicist. One test that Joe Biden has been giving himself consistently for years is colonoscopy with his head. In any case, Joe Biden was then asked about, what happens if you can't finish your term? And he's like, well, what happens if you get hit by a car? Not even kidding. This is the thing that happened. This is him trying to, again, calm doubts about him.
How can you assure the American people that you won't have another night like the one you did in Atlanta?
Look at my career. I've not had many of those nights. It was a terrible night, and I really regret it happened. But the fact of the matter is, how can you assure you're going to be on faith that can intervene on your way to go to, work tomorrow?
What? What? But it all ended with some shouting, which is what you want from an old man shouting at clouds. So at the very end of this interview, he starts talking about how he's frustrated by Democrats. He starts ripping into the elites because that was his cue from Joe Scarborough. And then he shouts, "Challenge me!" And it's pretty great.
Remember all this talk about how I don't have the black support? Come on, give me a break. Come with me. Watch. I'm getting so frustrated by the elites. Now, I'm not talking about you guys, but about the elites in the party who they know so much more. But if any of these guys don't think I should run against me, go ahead, announce for president. Challenge me at the convention. On Europe, the polls are wrong in France. They're also right. There's no right wave or tide here in America either.
Challenge me. Okay, dude. Again, I love Joe Biden ripping the elites. That dude has been in Congress since he was 29 years old. He is now 8,211 years old. He's not an elite? By what standard? Joe Biden is obviously a member of the elite. He's been in the Senate since before he was born, forever. He needs to wake up and smell the coffee. Black Rifle coffee. Now, here's the thing. I love Black Rifle coffee, but I don't always have time to brew coffee the traditional way every morning, which is why I love Black Rifle Coffee's ready-to-drink cans. Ready-to-drink coffee is perfect for people who need their coffee quickly. Each contains at least 200 milligrams of caffeine and is available in a variety of flavors like vanilla bomb, salted caramel, mocha, and vanilla caramel. Black Rifle Coffee is a veteran-founded coffee company operated by principled men and women who honor those who protect, defend, and support our country. With every purchase you make, they give back. Stop running out of coffee and sign up for a Coffee Club subscription to have Black Rifle coffee delivered straight to your door on a schedule. Coffee Club subscribers receive their high-quality coffee at lower prices with free shipping. Plus, they get early access to exclusive deals and prices. Save money, drink America's coffee. Go to blackriflecoffee.com to view their entire collection of premium roasts from light to extra dark. You can also find Black Rifle Coffee in grocery and convenience stores near you. That's blackriflecoffee.com. With the crazy news cycle we are currently enmeshed in, Black Rifle Coffee is basically keeping the DailyWire going at this point. Go check them out yourself, blackriflecoffee.com. Again, that's blackriflecoffee.com for America's best coffee. So Tommy Vietor, who used to drive the bus for Barack Obama and then turned into an Obama staffer, and he's now on Pod Save America over at Crooked Media. He tweeted out, Biden's claim that average voters don't have concerns about his ability to win is just not factually accurate, as is the suggestion that he hasn't lost support among black voters. And then he cites some polling data demonstrating that's not true. 75% of voters say Democrats would fare better with an alternative presidential candidate. Whoops. Those must be the elites that Joe Biden is very upset with. Meanwhile, on CNN, Jim Acosta was freaking out over Joe Biden's bizarre call-in to Scarborough.
I mean, it was a little bit of a page out of Donald Trump's playbook, calling into a morning show this morning.
Yes, I think we should recognize that. I don't want to use the phrase Trumpian and go down that path as an insult, because it's not meant always as an insult. It's a recognition that certain political tactics that worked for Donald Trump might also work for other politicians. But yes, Biden did sound a bit Trumpian in this most recent call. He did, by the way, also on ABC. There's an element of resentment and grievance that you and I very well recognize from the former president. And we do know that motivates some voters. It certainly is a way to fire up base voters.
I guess Brian Stelter trying to turn that interview into something good for Joe Biden. It was not something good for Joe Biden. Well, all of this broke out into the open in the White House press room. So, again, the press are not surprised by the extent of Joe Biden's decline. They are surprised that the Biden White House let the man out of the basement. That's the part they're surprised by. They figured that they were fine lying for Joe Biden because the campaign would also lie for Joe Biden. And then a year into his next term, he would die. And then Kamala Harris would be president. No one would be the wiser. The cover-up would have succeeded. But the cover-up failed because the old man decided he needed to be on a stage with Donald Trump. So he went on that stage and he promptly fell over. So the press is fighting mad. They're also fighting mad because it now turns out that a Parkinson's doctor visited the White House like 10 times over the course of the last year. So they went to the White House press room, all the members of the press, and they hammered away at the worst White House press secretary in American history, Karine Jean-Pierre. She was asked, why exactly won't Joe Biden just take a cognitive exam? And just like Joe Biden, who says he won't take a cognitive exam because he's testing himself, she literally has no answer because she's terrible at her job.
But there have been a number of people who have said, listen, why don't you have a cognitive test just to rule out that there are any issues? Would the president, would you counsel him to do that just to sort of put an end to these questions?
Andre, I hear you. The neurologist has said it is not warranted. The president himself, he said it today, he said it multiple times, and the doctor has said this. Everything that he does day in and day out as it relates to delivering for the American people is a cognitive test. And that is what the medical doctor has said.
Very convincing stuff. Well, the press room turned into a yelling match because she wouldn't answer basic questions as to why a Parkinson's doctor had actually visited the White House. She tried to claim that the doctor just comes to the White House routinely to visit with, all the Parkinson's patients at the White House. It got very, very rough for Karine Jean-Pierre right here. It turns out that, she has never been up to the job, and it got exposed in this very moment.
It's public
information. I hear you. Guys, hold on a second. There's no reason to go back and forth and be in this aggressive way.
Miffed around here about how information's been shared with the press corps about him.
What are you missed about? What are you missed about?
Everything he just asked about.
And then every time I come back and I answer the question that you guys asked.
Correctly, you didn't have to come back and clean it up.
I never answered the question incorrectly. That is not true. I was asked about a medical exam. I was asked about a physical. That was in the line of question that I answered. And I said, no, he did not have a medical exam. And I still stand by that. Matter of fact, the president still stands by that. He had a verbal check-in. That is something that the president has a couple times a week.
Now in regards to Dr. Kevin Kennard.
And I am telling you right now that I am not confirming names from here. It is a security reasons. I am not going to do that, Ed. It doesn't matter how hard you push me. It doesn't matter how angry you get with me. I'm not going to confirm a name. It doesn't matter if it's even in the log. I am not going to do that from here.
But why won't she? It was in the log. Okay, so again, when she says she's been totally transparent, that's not true. She said there was no medical check-in for Joe Biden after that terrible debate performance. And then it turns out that he actually did check in with the doctor. And now she's trying to distinguish between a medical check-in and a verbal check-in with the doctor. Like, come on. Who believes any of this? But the press continued to press Karine Jean-Pierre because, again, they are the ones who have been humiliated here. It was their complicity that was exposed. And she got very upset. And she went into her meaningful voice as to how upset and offended she was. And she started school-marming the press.
I just want to take a step back for a second, because I do take offense to what Ed alluded to. You know, come out here every day. There's a press briefing, and we do our best to give you the information that we have at the time. That's what we do. And we understand that the freedom of the press, we respect the freedom of the press. You heard me talk about this last week. I appreciate the back and forth that we all have. I try to respect you, and I hope you try to respect me. And we literally do everything that we can. My team does everything that we can to make sure we get the answers to you. That's what we do. And sometimes we disagree. Sometimes we are not in agreement. But you know what? That's democracy. That is what is important, to have that healthy back and forth.
Oh, my goodness.
And so to say that I'm holding information or allude to anything else is not unfair. It's really, really unfair. I think people who are watching and have been watching this briefing for this past week could say that we are doing our best in this briefing to provide the information that we have. And I will admit, I will be the first one to admit, sometimes I get it wrong. At least I admit that. At least I admit that.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You literally, in this very press briefing, didn't admit that. She's a joke. The White House is a joke. Karine Jean-Pierre, terrible at her job. You probably don't need her at your business, but here's the thing. When you are starting a business, you need something like RAMP. Why? Well, if you're a finance professional looking for a better way to maximize productivity and cut wasteful spending, RAMP could be the answer. RAMP is a corporate card and spend management software designed to help you save time and put money back in your pocket. With RAMP, you can issue cards to every employee with limits and restrictions. You can also stop wasting time at the end of every month by automating your expense reporting. RAMP's accounting software automatically collects receipts and categorizes your expenses in real time, so you don't have to do it. You'll never have to chase down a receipt again. Your employees will no longer spend hours submitting expense reports. The time you'll save each month on employee expenses will allow you to close your books 8 times faster. RAMP is super easy to use. Get started in less than 15 minutes, whether you have 5 employees or 5,000. Get $250 when you join RAMP. Just go to ramp.com/Shapiro. That's spelled RAMP.com/Shapiro. Again, that's ramp.com/Shapiro. Cards issued by Sutton Bank and Celtic Bank, members FDIC. Terms and conditions do apply. Ramp.com/Shapiro. That's spelled RAMP.com/Shapiro to get started and get $250 when you join RAMP. Actually, my favorite thing that the White House press office has been doing over the last 24 hours, they're very focused on the idea that Joe Biden's going to give a big presser on Thursday. Now, there's a lot of hubbub about this presser on Thursday. Is the pressure going to mount so high that Joe Biden actually resigns on Thursday? That is one area of speculation. Given the current trajectory, the answer presumably is no. But the White House is now touting Joe Biden doing a presser because this is supposed to be like a big win. If the president can withstand one press conference, that means he is fit for office, and you should ignore everything you've been seeing for the last several years. But they are so incompetent. They are so truly incompetent. So John Kirby goes out there with Karine Jean-Pierre, and they say that Joe Biden is going to do a presser. They call it a big boy press conference. A big boy press conference. That's their term, not mine. Theirs. As producer Zach says, this is a Huggies commercial. I'm a big boy now press conference. It's the Huggies pull-ups for Joe Biden, according to Joe Biden's own White House. Could they honestly, their branding efforts suck. Bidenomics, giant fail. How about big boy presser? Why would that? A big boy presser? The whole question about Joe Biden is whether he has the mind of a small child at this point, whether he can actually keep his undies clean throughout the day. And they're like, well, he is going to hold a big boy presser with his big boy potty and his trike. Here we go, man.
After that, the president will hold a press conference. I guess a big boy press conference is what we're calling it. And
but why would you call it that?
This week, President Biden will speak to national labor leaders of AFL-CIO, host the NATO summit to show the unprecedented strength of our alliance, hold a press conference, a big boy press conference, according to Justin Sink from Bloomberg.
A big boy press conference? Why are they using that language? They're so stupid. The entire question is whether Joe Biden has a functional brain. Like, well, he will hold a big boy press conference, just like a big boy. And then Joe will come out and so, you answered all the questions, Joe. Yeah. And he's going to stand there smiling like an idiot with a dunce cap in the corner. Things are going amazing at the White House. John Kirby, by the way, was asked, you give him security briefings and such. Is he sentient during those? And Kirby's like, I'm not going to answer this question, man.
Have you, in your meetings with him, ever seen him appear similarly to the way he did on debate night?
Look, I'm a spokesman. And
you're in a lot of meetings with him.
I am. The last thing I'm going to do is sit here and talk about every meeting I've had with the president. What I can tell you is what I saw in that debate is not reflective of the man and the leader and the commander-in-chief that I have spent many, many hours with over the last 2.5 years in terms of the specificity of the way he probes, the questions he asks. Heck, just this morning, he was asking me questions about the situation on the European continent that I couldn't answer, and I told him I had to get back to him.
Wow. Wow. A stellar intellectual display from the President of the United States, who is non-compos mentis. So again, this meltdown is now breaking out all over. Nate Silver says that the media have to stop being blamed by the Democrats for all of this. It's the Democrats' fault. Meanwhile, Democratic donors are pulling their money from Biden. They're starting to look down ticket because they're already realizing that Joe Biden, if he's the nominee, is cratering. That dude is the Malaysian Airlines flight that is just... According to Politico, shaken by mounting doubts over whether President Joe Biden should lead the party's ticket, some Democrat donors have begun pinning their hopes on down-ballot races instead. And insurgent candidates like Long Island's Laura Gillen could benefit from the newfound interest. Gillen, a former local official challenging GOP Representative Anthony D'Esposito, raised about $1.9 million in the past 3 months, more than tripling her first quarter haul. Why? Because donors and fundraisers are uncertain about Biden, and now they're trying to just put their money in other places. They are diversifying away from the presidential race. This is a problem for Joe Biden, who has now been overtaken in the money race by Donald Trump. Meanwhile, according to Lisa Desjardins, who is a reporter for PBS NewsHour, there are very few Democratic senators pushing for Biden to stay in the race. There was supposed to be a meeting with Mark Warner, who's one of the people pushing for Biden to leave, but that has now been set aside as senators try to think about what's the best way to do this. According to Desjardins, Dems are seeing internal polling per 3 sources that shows serious growing issues in Minnesota, New Mexico, Virginia, and Wisconsin for Biden. There's frustration and questions about the White House messaging that seems to deny a deeper problem exists. One senator told me, everyone here has campaigned and politically, quote, you know a death spiral when you see it. So that's not great. Well, the Democrats are in chaos. In fact, the entire government is in chaos because it turns out that our tax receipts are too low for our spending. Well, the IRS is coming up with new ways to chisel money out of you. They are escalating their collections by adding 20,000 new agents and sending millions of demand letters. Handling that alone can be a huge mistake and cost you thousands of bucks in these challenging times. Your best offense is Tax Network USA. With over 14 years of experience, the experts at Tax Network USA have saved clients millions in back taxes. Regardless of the size of your tax issue, their expertise is your advantage. Tax Network USA offers 3 key services: protection, compliance, and settlement. Upon signing up, Tax Network USA will immediately contact the IRS to secure a protection order, ensuring that aggressive collection activities like garnishments, levies, or property seizures are halted. If you haven't filed for a while, need amended returns, or you're missing records, Tax Network USA's expert tax preparers will update all your filings to eliminate the risk of IRS enforcement. Then they'll create a settlement strategy to reduce or eliminate your tax debt. The IRS is the world's largest collection agency. Now the tax season is over, they're coming after you. Tax Network USA can even help with state tax issues. For a complimentary consultation, call today, 1-800-245-6000, or visit their website, tnusa.com/Shapiro. That's 1-800-245-6000, or visit tnusa.com/Shapiro today. Don't let the IRS take advantage of you. Get the help you need with Tax Network USA. Meanwhile, more and more Democratic representatives are now coming out of the woodwork to declare that they do not want Joe Biden to be the president of the United States on a going-forward basis. Adam Smith from Washington has already said this publicly. So, for example, did Democratic Representative Mike Quigley of Illinois. Says he's frail, which obviously is true.
Look, perceptions are absolutely ruling in things like this in a campaign. He looks very frail. His voice is very soft. It's not robust. And again, it is not how I perceive that. It's how the American people perceive it. And you can see it influencing the numbers.
Meanwhile, the more purple your district or state, the more you are very worried about Joe Biden. Senator John Tester, who is running a very tough re-elect race against a Republican candidate named Sheehy in Montana, he is now coming out and being like, I don't know about this Biden guy. Quote, President Biden has got to prove to the American people, including me, that he's up to the job for another 4 years. Meanwhile, I'll continue to do what I've always done, stand up to President Biden when he's wrong and protect our Montana way of life. So Tester's like, I'm going to run screaming away from Joe Biden. He's going to put on those Wile E. Coyote rocket shoes and be like, vroom, like as fast as he possibly can get away from Joe Biden. That's how fast he's getting away from Joe Biden. By the way, he is likely going to lose his Senate race. The Montana race is looking very bad for John Tester. Meanwhile, Hakeem Jeffries put out a rather cryptic Bible verse today via Twitter. Quote, do not be discouraged, for the Lord God will be with you wherever you go. That's Joshua 1:9. That sounds uplifting, right? There is only one problem. In context, the beginning of the book of Joshua, for those who know their Bible, begins with a recap. Moses has died, and now the new leader is going to lead them into the promised land. Uh-oh. The first few verses, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give to them, to the Israelites. That leads into that passage that Hakeem Jeffries cited right there. So that's awkward. Meanwhile, Michael Moore is off the train. He says that this campaign is the cruelest form of elder abuse imaginable.
The problem here is that I think there's a form of elder abuse going on here, where the Democratic Party and the people that are part of the apparatus pushing him to stay, and then he comes out and he says, I'm staying, and the family says, I'm staying, and I don't know about you, Eamon, but in spite of my criticisms about Gaza with Biden, watching the debate a week ago was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It was, and it was like, imagine that was your father up there. What would you want to, I'm thinking, why isn't anybody doing anything? Why didn't they do it? Why did they even let him go out on the stage in this condition?
Broken clock, right twice a day. Also, Michael Moore, perfect evidence of what I call my Toodles singularity theory, which is whenever Democrats get older, they start to look like Toodles from Hook. So that is awkward for him. Meanwhile, some Democrats trying to rally round the Biden flag. Richie Torres of New York, who is one of the more moderate lawmakers in the Democratic caucus, and who doesn't actually want to surrender the party to the radical left. He's obviously been very pro-Israel. He put out a statement, quote, regardless of where one stands on the question of President Biden's political future, the intra-party mixed messaging strikes me as deeply self-destructive. Those publicly calling on President Biden to withdraw should ask themselves a simple question. What if the president becomes the Democrat nominee? The drip, drip, drip of public statements of no confidence only serve to weaken a president who has been weakened, not only by the debate, but also by the debate about the debate. Weakening a weakened nominee seems like a losing strategy for a presidential election. The piling on is not so much solving a problem as it is creating and compounding one. The process by which we decide how to move forward matters as much as the decision itself. So that's not even Torres defending Biden. That's him saying what is obviously true, which is as Democrats continue to wail on Joe Biden, they're actually undercutting his own base of support. Now, is it really going to undercut his base of support, or is it just that everybody had confirmed what they already knew? I think it's more the latter. Now, there are some people who are coming to his actual defense. That would include the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Representative Stephen Horsford of Nevada. He put out a statement saying President Joe Biden is the nominee and has been selected by millions of voters across this country, including voters here in Nevada. The voters in Nevada care about a thriving and equitable economy, taking on big corporations, yada, yada, yada. They know President Biden and Vice President Harris are fighting for them. We're not going back. We're moving forward. Hard to say that you're moving forward when your nominee is literally incapable of moving forward physically. He has to be propped up on some sort of dolly and wheeled forward. Senator John Fetterman, another one of the moderates in the Democrat caucus. Again, I think you're seeing some moderates in the Democrat caucus who are trying to uphold Biden mainly because they don't like the possibility of what comes next. Here is John Fetterman saying, he's fine, everything's cool.
I actually spent the entire day with the president, and he was perfect.
Perfect.
Whether it was in Philadelphia or whether it was in Harrisburg, at every single stop that we had, people were thrilled. I mean, people were thirsty to have their picture taken with the president. And he was crisp and he was engaged. And the Harrisburg event, it was actually in the 90s, and he was crushing. He was just doing fine. It was like a perfect, normal kinds of Joe Biden that I've always seen. And he has to be really happy after that day, because whether we went, they were all great events.
Yeah, unfortunately, no one believes that. At least points for honesty to Whoopi Goldberg. So again, Whoopi is like the dumb version of the Democrat, so she says all the quiet parts out loud. So here she is just saying the quiet part out loud, which is, I don't care if he's sentient. I don't care if his brain functions. I don't care if he's crapping himself on a daily basis. At least he's not Trump.
I mean, listen, I'm just going to add my 2 cents because I wasn't here on the day that y'all talked about it. I don't care if he's pooped his pants. I don't care if he can't put a sentence together. Show me he can't do the job, and then I'll say, okay, maybe it's time to go. Now, he had a bad night the first time that he went out and debated with Kamala Harris. And everybody wanted him to quit then and say, you can't talk to women like this, or you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. He came back, said, you know what, I got it. and gave 4 years. So, yeah, I have poopy days all the time. All the time. I step in so much poo you can't even imagine.
I don't want to imagine that. That's horrifying. That was TMI there, Whoopi. Didn't need to know that. It was bad enough when Patrick Swayze was making out with you thinking you were Demi Moore. Now you're, wow. Now you're like, wow. Imagery you can't get out of your head. So that's not good. Meanwhile, Democrats are left with the one argument they always have, which is Donald Trump is orange Hitler. We'll get to that argument in just one moment. First, we've been working tirelessly on a project. It is now finally here for everyone to see. That project is Scamala, Kamala Harris Unmasked, my explosive 3-part series. It's now streaming in its entirety at DailyWire Plus. We went deep into Kamala Harris's past, exposing the truth the mainstream media have been obscuring for years. From her calculated climb in California politics to her catastrophic vice presidency, nothing is off limits. Every scandal, every gaffe, every radical policy, it is all laid bare for you to see and for your friends to see in case they were thinking, it doesn't matter. If Biden gets elected, Kamala will take over. Ugh. We're talking backroom deals, failed presidential campaigns, a vice presidency in complete disarray. It is even more shocking than you thought. This is the political wake-up call America desperately needs right now. Take a look at the trailer for Scamala, Kamala Harris Unmasked. Kamala Harris is a hair's breadth from the Oval Office.
She's so bad. She's so pathetic.
But how did she get here? How did someone with such a knack for failure manage to climb the greasy pole to the precipice of the most powerful position in the world?
We did it. We did it, Joe.
In this documentary podcast, we're peeling back the layers of Kamala Harris's career, exposing the scandals, the missteps, and the awkwardness that have come to define her journey. Because here's the ugly truth. Kamala Harris is a scam artist, and that scam artist is now a hair's breadth from the Oval Office, where her incompetence and inauthenticity aren't just a problem, they're a dangerous, existential issue for the United States. Join me in this exclusive 3-part series, Scamala, Kamala Harris Unmasked. Stream now on DailyWire Plus. Discover the benefits of becoming a member to support our mission to fight the left and build the future. Don't be left in the dark. Stream all 3 parts of Scamala, Kamala Harris Unmasked for free right now, exclusively on DailyWire Plus. Get the facts, see the evidence, understand the true threat Kamala Harris poses to our nation. So in the end, Democrats, faced with the prospect of a senile president and a very unpopular vice president who would take over from him even if he were to leave, Democrats have but one argument left in their quiver, and you know what it is. It's orange Hitler! You knew they were going there. You knew they were. The New Republic has now released a cover showing Trump as Hitler. Guys, like, really? Seriously? The New Republic, what a joke they've become. I remember a time when the New Republic was sort of the center-left magazine of record, and now they're just a clown show. They basically turned into Slate.com. American fascism, what it would look like with the full-scale Hitlerian font and a merge of Trump's face with Hitler's face. You mean the guy who moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and who has pledged support to the Jewish state and who has Jewish grandchildren and whose daughter is Jewish? You mean that one? Just like Hitler would? Is that what we're talking about right here? Hitler, famous for his Jewish support. Like, seriously? Also, Donald Trump, Hitler? Like, I'm sorry, you're going to have to do better than that. But they won't. They'll do it anyway. They'll just keep saying it over and over and over until you don't believe it, because it ain't gonna work. He was president already, and he wasn't Hitler. All that happened was that the economy did really well and there were no foreign wars. That's what I remember. He said a lot of dumb crap on Twitter, and that was pretty much it. Dumb crap on Twitter, no foreign wars, a bad last year because of COVID and Black Lives Matter riots, no 40-year inflation, good economy. And those are the things I remember. I don't remember the boxcars. I feel like I would have. I don't remember the giant crematoria under Donald Trump. I feel like I would have noticed if that had happened. I feel like I have like a dog in that fight. Donald Trump has said, but they're going to go for it. It's all, everyone is Hitler, I don't like. Strong stuff here from the Democrats. Democratic Representative Gregory Meeks of New York, he says that people who support Trump are supporting Hitler, which is weird because every damned weekend there are people who actually support Hitler rallying who are Democrats. People who are rallying in favor of Hamas, a Hitlerian hate group that wishes to extirpate every Jew from planet Earth. And the Democrats are patting those people on the shoulders. Meanwhile, they're looking at Trump and they're like, God, that guy, he's just like Hitler. I mean, just like Hitler. I mean, if you ignore everything, then he is like Hitler. Honestly, Democrats, their take on Donald Trump is reminiscent of one of my favorite jokes. What is the similarity between a plum and a cow? They're both purple except for the cow. That's the similarity between Donald Trump and Hitler. Like, come on. Just come on. Here we go. Gregory Meeks.
Donald Trump cannot be president again. He's an existential threat to democracy. Now, what I think, thank God, Democrats are not Republicans. Republicans just flock in one line. That's something that endangers democracy. That's what happened in the 1930s. The Germans just walked in line with Hitler and Stalin. They just walked in line.
They oh my God. Oh, by the way, the people who are walking in line right now are the people who are pretending that Joe Biden is just fine. By the way, can we get to Hitler's platform for a second? So Donald Trump has now approved the Republican National Committee platform. And I would like to point out at this point that this platform is the most moderate platform in the history of the Republican Party by far, by like a huge long shot, because Donald Trump is playing the smart. He realizes that Joe Biden and the left have completely abandoned the political center in America. And so he is going to fill that political center by presenting some pretty popular policies, and he's going to edge out pretty much all the edgy Republican conservative policies. So, for example, in his brand new platform, the 2024 platform, there's effectively no mention of abortion. It just kind of goes away. He suggests that we believe that there's a right to life, but that has to be effectuated at the state level. So no federal legislation with regard to abortion is what is now in the Republican platform. And then he lists some 20 key principles, all in caps, as Donald Trump's want, because we know Donald Trump, just like your great Aunt Mary, loves the caps lock button in using email. So anyway, here are the actual things. And put aside the fact it's in caps lock and the phraseology with the weird capitalization and all the rest of it. The reality is that the things he is proposing here are like 70-30 propositions in American politics, because Donald Trump is actually playing this super smart. He's actually playing this smarter. Democrats are out there right now. They're like, where is Donald Trump? Hey, you keep saying that Joe Biden can't get on the campaign trail. Why isn't Donald Trump on the campaign trail? Because he's following Napoleon's law of war. Never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. Here are the principles in the RNC platform. You ready? Seal the border and stop the migrant invasion. Carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. These, again, are all majority propositions. End inflation. Make America affordable again. That's not an actual policy. That's a goal, but everyone agrees with it. Make America the dominant energy producer in the world by far. Again, a majority proposition. Stop outsourcing. Turn the United States into a manufacturing superpower. Now, again, I'm more of a free trader than Donald Trump, but that's a popular proposition in the United States. Large tax cuts for workers and no tax on tips. Defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. Prevent World War III, restore peace in Europe and in the Middle East, and build a great Iron Dome missile defense shield all over our entire country, all made in America. Now, again, Iron Dome is actually for rocket defense, not missile defense per se, but a missile defense shield around America would be a good thing, obviously. And the weaponization of government against the American people. Stop the migrant crime epidemic. Demolish the foreign drug cartels. Crush gang violence and lock up violent offenders. Rebuild our cities, including Washington, D.C., making them safe, clean, and beautiful again. Strengthen and modernize our military, making it without question the strongest and most powerful in the world. Keep the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. Fight for and protect Social Security and Medicare with no cuts, including no changes to the retirement age. I disagree with that. As a conservative, I think that's unsustainable. Also, that is a popular political position. Again, Donald Trump is running directly to the middle of the political spectrum. All this talk about he's Hitlerian fascist on the right. No, he's not. This is a perfectly moderate centrist document. Name the thing here that's wildly radical. Seriously. Cancel the electric vehicle mandate and cut costly and burdensome regulations. Cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, radical gender ideology, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on our children. Keep men out of women's sports. Deport pro-Hamas radicals and make our college campuses safe and patriotic again. Secure our elections, including same-day voting, voter identification, paper ballots, and proof of citizenship. Unite our country by bringing it to new and record levels of success. Please, name the thing here that is wildly controversial. What, is there anything there that's even remotely super right-wing? Maybe the deportation line? But Americans are in favor of that. So what in the actual F are Democrats talking about? And the answer is they have to, of course, say that he's Hitler. But they said that Bush was Hitler. I'm old enough to remember that. Bush, Hitler. You remember this? If you're older than about 30, you remember it. They said the same thing about Mitt Romney and John McCain. Everyone is Hitler. Everyone who runs on the Republican ticket is Hitler, including Donald Trump. That dog, again, is not going to hunt. It's not going to work. Meanwhile, Democrats continue to get more and more radical. Astonishingly, House Democrats are now launching a united effort against an election bill that requires voters to show that they are citizens before they vote. Now, I'm going to need an explainer on this. Where are Democrats coming from? Like, what is the actual good faith explanation for why they are against showing that you're a citizen before you vote? That seems really easy. Forgive me, but we do it every time we fly. Like what? According to the New York Post, House Democrats launched a united effort to vote against a Republican-backed election bill that would require voters to provide proof of citizenship to cast ballots in federal elections. Republicans are pushing the passage of the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, otherwise known as the SAVE Act, which would amend the National Voter Registration Act and require states to obtain proof of citizenship from voters for federal elections, as well as purge non-citizens from voter rolls. Democratic leadership is urging House members to vote against the bill, saying it would place an extreme burden on countless Americans. How in the world does that place an extreme burden on countless Americans? Please explain your logic. That's absurd. Apparently, the law would require state election officials to ask about citizenship before providing voter registration forms, require an individual to provide proof of citizenship in order to register to vote in federal elections, allow state officials to accept a wide variety of documents that make it easy for citizens to register to vote in federal elections, and provide states with access to federal agency databases so they can remove non-citizens. Voters would be required to provide proof of citizenship via ID and documentation, like a passport, a government-issued photo ID showing proof the individual was born in the United States, military ID, or valid photo ID, as well as documentation showing proof of citizenship like a birth certificate. Again, this is not tough. You have to do this stuff to get a passport. And the idea that this is wildly complicated is it's crazy. What exactly is the alternative? Why would you be obstructing this bill unless you actually do want illegal immigrants on, for example, the voting rolls? The Biden administration then put out a full statement explaining that they oppose it. Quote, the bill will do nothing to safeguard elections. It would make it much harder for all eligible Americans to register to vote and increase the risk that eligible voters are purged from voting rolls. The evidence is clear. The current laws to prevent non-citizen voting are working as intended. Okay, I don't believe you. I just don't believe you. I find this hard to believe, given that this administration has facilitated the entry of somewhere between 7 and 10 million illegal immigrants on Joe Biden's watch. So, speaking of the Biden administration border policy, can we point out now that they complained about Donald Trump's border policy. One of the things they complained about was kids in cages. Remember this? Kids in cages. Oh my God, the kids in cages. Oh, it's just the worst. Oh. Okay, and it turns out that Barack Obama started the kids in cages, and then it turns out that policy mandates the kids in the cages if you wish for them to stay with their families. And then it turns out the kids were let out of the cages. And what did Joe Biden do with them? He just handed them off to random adults. According to the Wall Street Journal, in 2021, when the new Biden administration was struggling to cope with a sudden influx of unaccompanied migrant children at the U.S.-Mexico border, the government repeatedly overrode the concerns of lower-level workers who warned about placing them in certain households, documents and interviews show. A caseworker wrote about a child slated to live in a hostel-like home in Florida with at least 3 adults, quote, it does not appear safe for the minor to be released to a home environment that was not fully assessed. A few days later, an official dismissed that recommendation to reject the proposed guardian, according to internal government memos. At another facility in Pomona, California, more than 100 children that summer were sent to temporary guardians who were issued denials earlier in the process by case coordinators, according to a review of internal government data. About 24 more denials were overturned because of clerical errors or issues such as missing fingerprints that were resolved, but many of the others were approved, with scant details explaining why. Some of those home addresses were tied to histories of criminal activity or other behavior that indicated the possibility kids would be put to work. So Joe Biden literally turned over children to child labor or abuse in order to avoid a bad headline about kids in cages. That's what it appears like from this Wall Street Journal article. The findings show the Biden administration officials sometimes overlooked concerns about potential guardians as they faced a political crisis over an unprecedented surge of unaccompanied minors soon after taking office. Officials said at the time they wanted to avoid the images that had plagued the Trump administration of children in severely congested facilities, widely derided as kids in cages. So instead, they decided that they were just going to shuttle these kids out to adults who had not been vetted. Well done. Again, the attempt to avoid bad headlines by this administration, resulting in later bad headlines, just another indicator of just how crazy these people are. Meanwhile, over in France, complete deadlock has resulted from Emmanuel Macron's decision to basically prop up the communists in order to stop the right wing. According to the Wall Street Journal, France's elections have now produced a fractious parliament that threatens an unprecedented period of political paralysis. No party came close to a majority. Lawmakers elected Sunday are now grouped into blocs with profound differences. The New Popular Front, those are the commies, is a diverse coalition whose most powerful faction is a polarizing far-left party called France Unbowed. Leaders of the pro-business bloc, allied with President Emmanuel Macron, have said they can't form a government with France Unbowed. Marine Le Pen and other leaders of the far-right National Party, which came in third, have signaled they won't form a government with either Macron's party or the left, who say the feeling is mutual. So, again, this is now a complete deadlock in France, largely because of the attempt by everybody in France to term anyone to the right of Emmanuel Macron far right. This is part of the linguistic game that is happening here. And so instead, he just empowered actual communists. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who is the head of the National Front Party over here, he has said one of his first moves will be to recognize the state of Palestine, a terror state, of course. Shocker. So apparently, the divergences appear to offer few areas for compromise between the new Popular Front and Macron's party. In addition, France Unbowed has outraged much of France's political establishment with their strident criticism of Israel. By the way, just like full-on anti-Semitism sometimes from France Unbowed. You'll notice that at the rallies in favor of France Unbowed, there were 0 French flags. There's all Palestinian flags, some Hezbollah flags, a lot of commie flags. Welcome to the new France. Well done, Europe. Alrighty, coming up, folks, this is our 2000th episode of The Ben Shapiro Show. We're going to celebrate in a weird way. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.